All right, folks, welcome back to the strategy session. I am your host, Rick Wilson. I am joined tonight by Joe Trippi, my friend and colleague, and our great friend and contributor, Frank Figliuzzi, who is one of the smartest guys about law enforcement Washington has ever put out there. And we have a ton of stuff to go through tonight, folks. We're going to go through rat-a-tat-tat, a lot of subjects, including that little kerfuffle from the weekend. But I want to start out with an example of the abuse of power of this government and this White House today, that they just can't quit trying to persecute the president's perceived political enemies. And the latest is Jim Comey. Yeah. They're trying to indict him. Well, they did. They've indicted him for posting a picture of seashells that said 8647. Claiming it was a death threat. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but I think it's important we understand that these people will always continue to come back to the people that they hate the most to try to get them. So, I want to start out with that on the topic tonight. And I want to start with you, Frank. This is the latest attempt on Comey, this lawfare inside the administration. What do you make of this? Is this just Todd Blanche and Jeanine Pirro trying to keep Trump happy, or do you think that they believe that this will go anywhere in court?
No, it's not. I long ago gave up on the notion that any of these were serious prosecutions. That's not what this is about. This is about revenge. It's about scorched earth for all who came after Trump. Mm-hmm. It's about trying to make them and their families feel like he says he felt. But the distinction here, and by the way, this indictment is coming out of, correct me if I'm wrong, it's coming out of North Carolina. It's not Jeanine Pirro.
Interesting.
And I think the only guess I have, guys, is that's where the shells were. So now apparently your venue is where your shells were. Now this is a new we've set new legal precedent, but venue can be found where the shells are, which is fascinating because I don't know where he posted the photo. He might have been back home. I have no idea. But just to clarify, this is a North Carolina indictment, and it's revenge. The distinction is that if he wants to say, well, this is what you did to me, the distinction, of course, is that the Jack Smith indictments and cases, Letitia James cases, they had real indictable, findable facts. And these revenge cases do not have those. So if Todd Blanche feels like he's got to prove his worth and tell the North Carolina U.S. attorney to do something, then he's done it. But I've got a word of caution for Todd Blanche. It ain't going to save you when Trump is finally dissatisfied.
No, nothing ever works that way. Joe, this is just that like rampant abuse of power now.
Yeah, but to be fair, they were shells in North Carolina. There is a basis of potential fact there, I guess. Not legal fact, but it's just insane. But more again, is like, Comey's going to have to go through the legal bills, pay lawyers, all that stuff. That's what this is about. It's
that's
just
the lawfare part.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Well, I think we all wish Jim Comey well here. This is just another abuse of this of their power, and I think it does speak though to how deeply off track this administration has become. They are right now in a political and economic crisis of their own making. That not a single voter in this country says, "Man, indicting Jim Comey sure is going to make my gas price go down at the pump." Or even worse, building that ballroom is sure going to make my life better. Because the ballroom has become the topic of the week. Yeah. When after the White House Correspondents' Dinner security breach, within a matter of minutes, the message wasn't about the president or about the would-be shooter. The message was about the ballroom. And I found it fascinating, and I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about it, that this jump to the ballroom. Joe, is this just psychotic old dude problem, or is this something deeper in Trump wanting memorials to himself after he goes?
Well, but it's also like completely orchestrated, like how fast everybody, exactly, went. I mean, just Potts and everybody immediately. And what's like, look, one of the things I thought right away is, hey, some good that might come out of this is that high-ranking government officials and the National Press Corps finally understands or might feel the panic and terror that 11-year-olds feel in school shootings across America multiple times a year, that they might actually feel that. And of course, the immediate response was, if they did, was from the administration, the ballroom and bunkers, when they've never done a damn thing to secure the schools or to help our kids. So it's like it's just an astonishing contrast of how quickly they went to the ballroom, and how quickly everybody, how much of the coverage is from press corps. I was so scared, we were panicked. There was like all this, and guess what? That's what so many Americans and children feel every, once a week, once a month for sure, too many times, and they don't do a damn thing about it.
Frank?
Yeah, look, first, I do think for anybody who's had an elderly relative the mind is starting to go, this is becoming where you fall back into what you know best. At his heart, he's a construction and real estate guy. He likes building things. That's what he knows, whether it's, paving over the Rose Garden, putting up, yellow umbrellas from Mar-a-Lago, whatever it is. When the world becomes very complicated, you revert back to what you know and what you can shine with. This is an unnatural obsession. It makes very little sense. And with regard to the court proceedings and challenges to the ballroom, the judge has already said, although it's at the appellate court level, but even the federal district court judge said, look, you can continue with the below ground thing. I got it. That's national security. Knock yourself out. So that's not what this is about. This is an irrational obsession. And from a security standpoint, which is where I come from, bring the notion of bringing a couple of thousand guests on a regular basis into the White House campus does not make the campus more secure. It makes it less secure. Yeah. And don't forget the obvious ethical and conflict of interest issues when private organizations want to come to you hat in hand and beg to rent out your ballroom, whether it's the Home Builders Association or the Press Corps or the Teachers Association. That's what he wants. He wants people begging for his ballroom, and it doesn't make sense.
Well, this filing today that was placed before a court in D.C. by the Attorney General of the United States. Frank, you've seen many a filing. How many of them have you seen that were clearly dictated by the president?
Zero. Also unnatural. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the capital take does give it away. Yeah, that's definitely there.
TDS, I just think that this thing is this filing is one more thing where Blanche is the most try-hard wannabe for the appointment to be AG of any human being I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, I can't. If I were an attorney, I'd be ashamed to file that. That's going to get laughed out of court. It's a ridiculous artifact.
What do you guys make of Lindsey Graham and Lauren Boebert coming out and saying that they're sponsoring legislation to have the taxpayers pay for the ballroom? Is that what's going on there?
Well, Mexico won't pay for it, so.
No, I think he's concerned that the real donors to this ballroom are about to get exposed in this court.
Yeah, it's the taxpayers.
Yeah,
they're going to move these taxpayers because that's like. But then, that's as Rick pointed out. Hey, my tax dollars building a ballroom, that'll help me with my gas prices and everything else that they're. I mean, it's just it's hard to tell what distraction comes next to keep us away from taxpayer ballroom stuff. Because
and it's, by the way, we're not talking about Epstein, are we? We're not.
No,
You know what? I mean,
No.
although I will say, to her great credit, Katie Fang has now filed a motion to get a special master to handle the Epstein files because the administration is so obviously covering them up and obviously not obeying the law.
Mhm.
I wonder what your thoughts, have you studied that much, Frank, and what your thoughts on that are? Because I mean, I'm glad she did it. I think it's a phenomenal thing to do. I just wonder if that is something that how the DOJ will fight back on that, because they clearly need to keep control of the Epstein files.
Yeah, it's it's quite clear that they're breaking the law. That's clear to me. Even by all you have to do is play their own quotes, whether it's Bondi and now Blanche. We're done. There's nothing here. Bondi repeatedly testifying on the Hill. Well, what you don't see is because of privilege. What privilege? What privilege? Right. And so that's a winning argument that you are breaking the law, signed by both houses of Congress and the president. Where I think Katie might, and God bless her, might be challenged is standing. Okay. Like why you, Katie? What are you doing? And that gets interesting.
Okay, I was just curious because I'm really glad she's taken the step. I just didn't understand all the legalities underneath it, but I do know a cover up when I see one, and this is Blanche's full-time job has been to cover this up, and I also wanted to get both of your feelings on this emergent drumbeat from Jim Comer in the House and other Republicans, like maybe it's time to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, guys, what are they thinking over there?
No, this is like it. Ballroom paid by taxpayers, and hey, let's pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, from a political strategy, you guys know this better than I do. It's horrible.
It's insane, right?
But it tells me that you do this when you're fearful that Ghislaine's really has about had it with the four walls of her cell. And
even in Club Fed, I think she's probably kind of
I've been there. Yeah, the therapy dog and the meals in your room, but she's growing tired of it, and I think they're worried.
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of folks in the Republican base who are very upset about Epstein still at this moment. They still think a majority of Republicans believe Trump is covering things up about Epstein, which is kind of an amazing poll number considering how loyal they have been to him for so long.
Yeah, but he's down to 70% approval among Republicans.
Yeah,
large, not just the Epstein. I mean, so all of it's eroding his which actually might be why some of them are panicking, calling for pardons, all that. I mean, in other words, they know what's coming and they're trying to. I agree with Frank. The fear factor there, but also Trump. I think that decline and fixation on sort of the things he fears is making him, it's just getting more and more crazy every time he, I want you to Blanche to here's what I want you to file. He's making that happen. And they can't fight him anymore because he's just.
I mean, he dictated that to Todd Blanche.
Yeah,
I mean, I read the filing this morning, and as you went through it, I mean, they clearly had some lawyer-related things they stuffed in there, but this was a let's make the boss happy so he doesn't throw his pudding all over the wall. It was kind of nuts.
So if he's afraid of Maxwell, he's now saying we need to pardon her. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, I think some of this is him projecting what he now is terrified of and wants to get in front of and do.
Yeah. Well,
it makes no sense.
One of the things he does not want is for any comedian to say anything funny about him, which is where we've gotten to the latest war on Jimmy Kimmel. And I got to tell you, the bit was nothing controversial. It was just a bit. But now you've got the full power of the administration, the FEC. They're going to try to cancel all of ABC Disney's broadcast licenses. I mean, guys, I know this is part of Brendan Carr's and Donald Trump's war on the press and war on comedy. But I'm just curious, like, is this another thing where that power of the state, where the abuse of power of the state starts to like trickle down to people where they're like, this isn't normal. What the hell?
Well, if you had told me 20 years ago we were going to have an entire administration going to war with Disney, I would have said, what the hell happened? But from this national security standpoint, if you look at history and the role of humor and satire, which is essential at a time like this, fascist dictators, authoritarians, they don't want it. They don't want it, and it's one of the first things to go. And we're seeing that happen here. If you lose the ability to laugh at ourselves collectively and at our leaders, you've lost freedom.
Let's play the clip of Kimmel responding last night after they lost their minds about the clip from the prior night.
It was a pretend roast. I said, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at her, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow, which obviously was a joke about their age difference and the look of joy we see on her face every time they're together. It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am. It was not, by any stretch of the definition, a call to assassination, and they know that. I've been very vocal for many years speaking out against gun violence in particular, but I understand that the First Lady had a stressful experience over the weekend, and probably every weekend is pretty stressful in that house. And also, I agree that hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband about it, because
I mean, he really has. Kimmel gets it. Like, you can't back down from these people. You cannot dial it back. You can't say, well, I'm going to give a few inches, because they will take all of it.
Yeah.
But
Frank, if you can indict, if they are indicting Jim Comey for photographing seashells on the seashore, I'll say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
Then the route they're choosing with Kimmel here is interesting. By the way, he should prepare for a possible criminal indictment, I suppose.
Of course.
But they're choosing this scorched earth. We're not only just coming after you, we're going to go after every ABC affiliate in the nation and their licenses, right? This is about silencing and suppression. And I think in their hearts, any sane lawyers in that administration know that a criminal prosecution would be this would lose in a second. Even a lawsuit would lose. But this idea of, oh no, I'm taking ABC, we're looking at all of your affiliate licenses. I'll tell you, that instills fear in corporate America.
Yeah, billionaires are not notoriously America's bravest.
Yeah,
Joe. No. I mean, this is one of those weird moments where the culture and Trump are quite disconnected, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, like Frank said, I mean, to go after Disney. I mean, who would have ever thought? I mean, that entire, not just the administration, but DeSantis, all of it from the very beginning. I mean, it's just been, the Disney's woke. I mean, all this crap that they projected onto Disney, and again, legally they can't do crap. They've been outmaneuvered by Disney on most of it. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, so we'll go the FCC, and of course you just wait for the divesting it to Nexstar or Sinclair or something,
which is
right?
Probably not,
or Ellison, whoever. It's crazy. Yeah. It's just more. It is state control. Exactly what Frank is saying. They don't want the ridicule. They don't want humor. They are trying to stamp it out everywhere. Kimmel, and it's. But the problem is culturally that the American people are laughing at the Kimmel jokes. They're enjoying it. Right. Maybe not MAGA, but the 65-70% of the country is laughing their asses off at Donald Trump and this administration, and they don't want to sustain that at all. They'll stop it at any cost.
Well, I want to jump from that joke to another, and I talk a little bit about my home state of Florida. and Ron DeSantis' absolutely batshit redistricting plan. And Joe, you know, we were talking about this before we came on the air. They're attempting to compress all the Democrats into Florida into 4 seats, into 4 super compact seats. You can see them there. Prior map, proposed map. And they've made a mistake, Joe. Talk to us about where you see the valence of the mistake here, because I think they're going to do this, and I think it could really explode on them.
Yeah, it's to do this, you have to make the other district. I mean, you have to make districts that are weakened on the Republican side. I mean, there's this. So to go back, there are 2 demographers who just came out with a report a couple of days ago, or yesterday, I think, in Texas, that have looked at the 5 districts that they created there, and have concluded that 3 of those are going to go for the Democrats because of the demographics that they were based on, with Latinos, Hispanic, all that stuff, that were based on when the Republicans, you know, when Trump got the vote with Hispanics in 2024, is not the case anymore. And so when you start to build these things and you basically base it on where independents were, like even 6 months ago, where Latinos were in 2024. You know,
that's a different world now.
Yeah, a totally different world. I think this is going to backfire the same way. They're gonna actually weaken themselves. If this even holds up, but we'll see.
I mean,
what's your take, Rick?
Yeah, so there are 2 things that they really have screwed up on this. The first is the presence of a thing called Amendment 6, passed in 2010. Right. When I was a Republican, I was on the other side of it, and we lost big time. Amendment 10 won with 63.4% of the voters approving of it, which says, during the process of redistricting, you may not advantage or disadvantage any political party, which says, essentially, you got to stop doing partisan redistricting. Now, it didn't stop the Republicans from creating this map, which was explicitly done at Trump's behest. And one of their presenters at the hearing today in Tallahassee stepped on a giant landmine where he was asked, did this district map that you have proposed weigh the percentage of Republicans in the districts? And he said, yes. That's it. The amendment says with the intent. That's it. He just admitted their intent. I'm not a lawyer, but Frank, that seems like the ball game right there. I mean,
I agree. It's a confession. It's tantamount to a confession. Yeah. I get worried about the longer term effect that this has on Americans writ large, which is there's already widespread disbelief and distrust in our system and in free and fair elections. And all of this does, whether it's Texas, California, or Florida now, is tell voters, you know what? Why should you even come out and vote? It's all fixed. And that hurts. That has a long-term impact.
Yeah, I think the Texas situation, where they misapprehended what the demographics were, Joe, as you were saying, is also playing out here in Florida. Those seats they rewrote in South Florida to bump the Democrats out of essentially take every Democrat out of Dade County. They're misreading Hispanic voters in Dade County right now. They are furious with the economy, with the damage the tariffs did to businesses all across South Florida, and with the fact that they've taken Cubans, Haitians, Dominicans, and Venezuelans out of TPS status. And while those people aren't voters, their family members all are. And they thought they were the good ones. And they were here playing by the rules with green cards and getting jobs and all that. Well, that anger is, I think they have kicked the hornet's nest down there.
Right. And if you're basing all this on what the state looked like in the 2024 election in terms of statewide, if the statewide races are, at least in all the polling I've seen, and I know you've looked at some too, Rick, they're close. I mean, David Jolly and Vindman, whether they can win or not, but they're much.
Jolly's inside the margin against Byron Donalds right now, which blows people away.
Right. And so that's because independents, other people are moving away from what we've seen across the country. That's true. And then you try to redraw these lines based on that stuff, that kind of stuff. I'm down in Monroe County. That district's is not gonna go Republican. I mean, if they think that that's red on their map, they're wrong about that, in my view. And like I've seen polling down here that says says, that people are gone and done with them. And by the way, I think that Disney, this is what I mean, how this stuff kind of layers up. If the Trump administration going after Disney and ABC and all that, there's plenty of people in Florida who remember DeSantis going after Disney and playing all that fastly. So it kind of compounds and layers on itself in a way that people say, screw this. It's just a bunch of games. And it's like Frank said, it's all bad for the politics of the country overall. But I think they're going to get the most of the hit for that this time around. Now, Democrats have to mean it when they say, hey, in California, we're only doing this time, and we're going to go back, and we've got to do that writ large across the country. But the Republicans are not going to play that ever right now.
Specific to Florida, as you pointed out, we've got David Jolly running for governor, ex-Republican running as a Democrat, who is inside the margin with Byron Donalds now. And Byron Donalds is under terrible fire from all of his Republican colleagues because he's crooked. Right. You got. Sorry, my dogs are here. You got Alex Vindman, who is running against Ashley Moody for U.S. Senate, and he's a little further behind, but he's competitive now.
Yeah,
and if he's a guy who raised $7 million in the first quarter, which that's real money, and it's kind of shocking a lot of people. I met with a young congressional candidate up here in the 2nd district this week, a guy named Nick Zeteslo, who is out there going to Republican areas, and they're like, "We don't want these data centers. What can you do to help us? If you'll help us, we don't want these data centers in our taking over our farmland." And he's like, the Republicans are just like telling him to shut up. And if you go and talk to them, they'll listen. They'll give you a fair shot in this environment. So it's kind of fascinating what we're seeing in terms of the change in Florida. A state that I helped make a very red state over time has reached its limit. People are leaving the state. The corruption's making them sick. They don't want to be here.
Corruption is the number one thing in the polls that I'm seeing here. It's corruption, corruption, corruption. And by the way, DeSantis is not a popular dude in this state.
No.
So him doing this, him leading the charge on it, this is, I think, is seen as a corrupt power grab that goes beyond even, I think, even Texas, even Trump calling on them to do Texas for him. I think this is going to hurt. And with these competitive statewide races here, I think there are going to be a lot of surprises for them when they lose some of these House seats that they think they're like in Texas, they think they've locked it in. They're going to be really shocked in November. We got to do the work.
We got a long way between here and there. Joe, one thing I want to talk about is I spoke to a former Republican colleague the other day who texted me this morning when that Tallarico poll came up, showing him leading both Cornyn and Paxton. And this is a guy who is very comfortable with Cornyn. He could hold his nose and vote for Paxton, but he said, if he is right now, if Tallarico right now, after they've been spending months trying to bloody him up, is leading both of those guys, he said the draw from down ballot in Texas is going to absolutely shock the crap out of Republicans on election day. If Tallarico pulls this thing off, it's going to pull a lot of Democrats up over the line. And that's something that Beto never quite had that effect. And Colin Allred never quite had that effect, but it's clearly building. And as you've been out in Iowa and talking to folks, you and I have been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. I talked to somebody in Kansas last night who's like, there is going to be a hell of a race for governor in that state. Iowa, every congressional in Iowa is in play.
Yeah,
every statewide race is now in play. The Ohio it is Ramaswamy's got a new scandal to deal with, and Acton and Pepper are running a great campaign.
Yep.
I mean, this whole Midwestern and Deep South thing is shaking the tree.
Yeah, no, you've got, look, I'm working for Doug Jones in Alabama, Tuberville. Jolly, I think, can do what you're talking about with Tellerico. If Jolly can keep it close or actually get by, it's going to pull up a whole bunch of Democratic vote. That's where I think they're wrong about what they're doing. I just saw a recent poll where corruption was sky high in Florida, and I just think this is like telegraphing this is how corrupt we can be. And people are sick. Like down here, they passed the same kind of thing. They passed that almost 70% said we don't want cruise ships, and down here. And of course, guess what? Tallahassee and DeSantis. Well, we'll just do an end around. Forget what people think. It's like the data center thing. It's just like, screw it. You shut up. We're doing it our way. And that corrupt grab. By the way, Republicans were always local control, state rights, all this stuff. That's just all gone here. It's just complete.
Well, I mean, and one of the things that David Jolly, I think, has a real advantage on is Byron Donalds is all in on Trump and the offshore oil drilling off of Florida. Yep. And he's also being funded by David Sachs and Peter Thiel and these data center weirdos who want to put in over 5 million square feet of data centers in Florida in the next 2 years. That's more square footage than will be built for any other purpose in the state. And it is wildly unpopular, especially with rural Republicans. So it's going to be a crazy. They are really, the corruption is the underlying issue that's going to kill them.
But Rick, I've got an island to sell you, because like you and I both know, they'll make those AI companies pay for those high utility rates. It won't be. Won't be Florida citizens.
Yeah, sure.
Pay for that stuff. No, they won't be that corrupt. They'll
My God.
The corruption issue is near and dear to my heart. I spent 4 years of my FBI career in the number 2 position at FBI Miami. So we had all of South Florida, and the corruption is rampant. Nothing has changed. But what has changed is that the FBI was the answer in Florida to addressing public corruption in a very, very big way.
Right.
And now you've got this bizarre situation where only if Trump hates your guts and wants to do it will the FBI jump and actually open corruption cases. So you've got this festering problem that's not going to get any better, because I fear, the FBI will be handcuffed, no pun intended, in actually addressing the real corruption in Florida.
I think that's such a good point to wrap up on, because folks, this has been a crazy week. And, we didn't talk a lot about the security incident at the Hilton, and frankly, Trump's going to change the subject today or tomorrow anyway. He's already off the rails on the ballroom and everything else. Nobody wants to see anybody harmed by an assassin or a potential assassin. But what Trump has underestimated is that Americans are hurting more than a ballroom will fix. And they jumped right to the ballroom after this event, which was a huge tactical and political mistake. Folks, thank you so much for watching the strategy session. As always, we appreciate you every Tuesday night. We try to come here and peel the curtain back a little bit, show a little leg. Frank, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Joe, my friend, I will talk to you later. And folks, we'll see you again next Tuesday.
Take care.
Take